We will have a conversation as soon as you finish breathing.
Give at least 3 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's extremely aerobic, I would say.
I hope I don't finish breathing.
No, please continue. Can we have another round of applause? So we call this the interview informal conversation portion of our program. And it came about, I mean, I certainly did not invent the talk show format, but it came about because I've seen amazing performers perform, and then I have questions about it, or how did they come up with it, or how did you arrive at doing what you do? For instance, was it something from high school or earlier, or was it something, what stage in your life did you discover that you love to move in this amazing way?
Well, literally, I started dancing 11 years ago when I was a sophomore in high school. That's when I first found breaking. I took a class at a studio, and it's something that I always wanted to do, but I kind of thought it wasn't something that you did. It was more of like you see like the circus, and you're like, oh, it'd be so cool to be in the circus, but no one actually joins the circus. But I joined the circus because I found out about this class, and I went to it, and I was like, oh, this is something that you can actually learn and do. But I think like really the answer to that question is like every day. Because especially over the last couple of years, I think every day offers new inspiration and new motivation to move. And the reason I moved today definitely isn't the same reason that I moved 11 years ago. And in some ways it's not the same reason that I moved yesterday. So I think every day has its own kind of new reasons to offer, and that's like why I keep going. You know, I don't have some sort of unstoppable motivation that was planted in me 11 years ago. It's more like every single day there's a new seed.
So every day you're interpreting the day, and every day has its own inspiration.
Yeah.
And the energy, I'm guessing, or reading in what you're saying, that the energy that you danced just now, there may be a completely different energy yesterday and a year ago and so forth.
Right, and I mean for me, like as a dancer, that's generated every time I dance by the music, by what I'm feeling from that. So like this dance was very specific to that song, and you know, the next dance that I do will be a lot different because it's going to be a totally different vibe in terms of what I'm hearing. And for me, like movement is all about expressing the sound in a way that is physical. Right? So if there's one sound and I want to express it in one way, it could be totally different than another sound that gets expressed in another way.
Right. Does anyone have a question? Oh, excellent. Yes.
Yeah, so do I understand that you had not heard that piece before you danced to it?
Right.
So how do you have any sense of anticipation, or how much energy do you start putting out because you don't know where it's going, right?
Yeah. I think it's just musical experience and just knowing, okay, this is the vibe of the song and this is where I think it's going to go. But honestly, I had no idea. Like, you heard the beginning of the song, but then it comes in with like this hard, like that fast part. That was totally unexpected. I was like, whoa, that's not what I thought was coming. But then it's just like riding it, and just every new 8 count, what's there, how can I respond to that? And sure, like sometimes you set yourself up and you're just like, whew, that was way more than I thought it would be. But yeah, it's just like going with the flow, I guess.
Another question from, yeah.
So going with the flow, are you listening or paying attention more to the rhythm than the melody, or is it some combination? Or?
I'd say it's a combination, and it's just picking out, for me, like, freestyle is so awesome because there's so many things that can set the creativity, right? It doesn't all have to come from me. That's one reason like the music's cool, because something new can come in and that can inspire my movement rather than me having to do, you know, create the movement and create the, you know, underlying whatever that is. And it's almost easier for me to dance to a song that I've never heard before or only heard once rather than dance to a song that I've heard 1,000 times, because if I know exactly what's coming, then I have to create everything in here rather than kind of being surprised and inspired in the moment.
So the more you know the piece, the more it's sort of intellectual, that you know what to expect.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I know this is coming, what can I do? And then there's 1,000 different options, and it's like, okay, what do I choose that's going to be the best? Whereas if I don't know it's coming, it's like, whatever my body tells me. Oh, there's a beat, boom, boom, okay, catch it. And that was the only option because that's what my body reacted and did.
So you're kind of enforcing spontaneity.
Yeah, totally.
I didn't know there was a dancing muse. All I knew about was the poetical muse. But clearly there is a dancing muse. A dancer who's the muse, yes.
Well, beautifully said. I happen to, Jim was an earlier guest artist, and he's a wonderful poet. So the muse might be more alive in music that you have not heard before. Well, and yet, in our coming early to set up this show, I saw you were rehearsing. There is choreography that you do, and where I'm sure the choices are very thoughtfully made and run through in the rehearsal process. So is that using a whole other part of your brain or your body in some way when you are choreographing the show?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me in many ways, like I said, like I'm first and foremost a freestyle dancer, but choreography is usually like almost like a means to an end. So like if there's a group or a show that's looking for you know, organized group effort and they want to see like 6 dancers on stage doing something together, a lot of times we'll supplement our freestyles with choreography. And at some level, like you can tell more of a story that way because you have different characters involved. And I think like there is times and places when that's necessary. But really, like it is a whole different world when you start doing that, because the whole idea behind freestyle is it's like in the moment self-expression, and it's really hard like to capture self-expression in a group because it's almost like an oxymoron, right? You can express something as a group, but the self-expression can't quite come through. So for me, like that's the beauty of freestyle, is like I can capture all of that in the moment, and it's always different and changing. But choreography is more of like, you know, if you want to tell a specific story the same every time, and you do have like a, you know, there is some power behind having a large group of people doing the same movement and telling the same story, and that can like capture something more vividly. But most of my dance is freestyle.
And freestyle is your preference?
Yeah, totally.
Wonderful. I'm curious, in something, in another art form, let's say drawing, someone will say, oh, I can't draw, or I can't draw a straight line. And I can draw, and what I have observed in my process of, I hardly draw anymore, but what I observed is that to learn how to do anything, you need to be with the discomfort of not doing it well. So when you mentioned that you were in your sophomore year of high school, or for that matter, just your first few years of doing your dance, were you frustrated with yourself? Like, did you have moments of going, oh, I'll never get that, or that this sucks, or oh, maybe I should draw or something? Did you have those moments?
Yes, but not just in the first years, always. Yesterday, I was thinking that, like,
Of course.
here yesterday, I mean, you always get in those spots, you know, because I think, like, that's the tale of, like, a true innovator is someone who's, like, always pushing the limit and always on that, like, next frontier of, well, I really do suck at what I'm trying to do right now. Because for me, like, sure, that's going to be different than someone who's coming into this as a beginner, but I should always be in a place as an artist and as an innovator where I'm sucking at something, right? Because sure, like, I don't suck at doing head spins, right? Because I've been doing that for years. But there are moves and dance styles and, you know, classes that I take that just completely defeat me every time. But I think that's important, right? Because that's how we continue to grow and push the level and push the limit of, like, what we can express. Because for me, there's only so much expression in, like, this is easy, right? Even in my freestyle, you'll see times, and, like, these guys will see it, and it's like, oh, he just messed that up. But to me, that's expressing something, right? That's expressing, I'm going to try something really, really hard right here, and I might mess it up, and sometimes I do mess it up, and to me, that's important, right? Because that's a whole different spectrum of, like, what I want to express. Because if I'm just doing the same thing the whole time, which is, like, easy for me, then how much emotion can I truly be putting out? And it's not even about growth at that point. It's more about, like, how can I express frustration if I'm not frustrated, right? That could be really hard. It's like, if I'm doing a move I've done 1,000 times and I'm trying to express frustration through that move, that's going to be like, I'm going to really have to act. Whereas if I do a move that I can barely do, and maybe I, like, mess it up, then I can literally be frustrated, you know, and be like, oh, I'm frustrated because I can't do this, you know.
Well, I'm sort of awed in a way that you so freely or are so willing to frustrate yourself. Well, frustrate yourself artistically. We're speaking. So that, I mean, I've heard the phrase, and I may even be misphrasing it, beginner's mind, where if we're going to learn something, it helps to accept that we are a beginner in something and not have an attitude, oh, I know everything, and we close our mind and we close ourselves off. You appear to be a human being, and so I imagine you're sometimes overly frustrated by frustration, and you get pissed at yourself like others do. I'm accepting myself. I don't get pissed at myself, but you struggle with your artistic development, is what you're telling us.
Yeah. I think that's what artistic development is like continuous struggle. Because if we're not, like, struggling, then, you know, how are we creating, you know? We're either doing something that we're already comfortable with and stagnating, or we're doing something that's, you know, been done before, and then we're not making anything new.
Wow.
And I think it's also, like, especially recently, like, becoming more of a, I guess, veteran in, like, movement. I think part of the journey is, like, accepting the reality of struggling every day as not, that doesn't equal being a bad artist. If anything, that equals being a good artist and, like, taking pride in that, and rather than being, like, self-deprecating because of that. Like, sure, there's sometimes when you're just like, I just suck, you know, I'm terrible. But really being able to have the confidence in, like, your artistry and being like, okay, because I'm not executing this move or dancing in this way or picking up this choreography, that means that literally as an artist I'm succeeding because I am struggling and I am growing. Whereas if I was in the studio doing the same move I've done 1,000 times, then sure, that maybe feels good, but that's just ego stroking, right? That's not truly creating art. And I think coming to terms with that is important, or else it can be really dismal, right? You can just always be self-deprecating and always be disappointed in yourself. But realizing like that disappointment is like, that's growth, you know? That failure, that's what it's all about.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining that. It makes me wonder if I'm failing frequently enough, and am I frustrating myself enough? Am I irritated with myself enough? I'm not sure. Do I understand that you do have another piece for us, a duet with?
Yeah.
So let's welcome. Do we welcome Changa?
Yeah.
I'd like to introduce Changa. Do we take the chairs away then?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say, Changa was my gateway to Block 1750. I never heard of this place, and Changa was doing this amazing performance at the open mic at the Innisfree Cafe, and may as well shout out to the Innisfree Cafe. I've been attending their Tuesday open mic begins at 7, and it's free. There's no cover. Buy yourself some cake or coffee or a book. But Changa said, "Hey, Ira, come see this place," and I did, and I've just been blown away by everything I see here. So please, I have this arrangement to move chairs. And I do it very poorly. No, it's okay. It's okay. I should have.
Creative energy's there, still there.
Actually, that was rehearsed. That was just a little bit. Okay.